Hello, everyone. Kieran from Speaking Spurs. Disappointment. Ange Postecoglou's first defeat. Um, Obviously, not a defeat within 90 minutes, but we lose on penalties to Fulham in the Carabao Cup. Second round. The first time we've been in the second round for 14 years, but obviously no European football. And probably got given one of the toughest fixtures we could have asked for. Um, I feel like in this game, Ange really got it wrong. Obviously, he's been great so far as a manager, but I think bearing in mind how good Fulham were last season, how strong. I mean, obviously, not all results have gone their way so far this season, but how strong they've looked within those games. They're a very well drilled team, got some very talented players. They showed that tonight. And we made way too many changes. 9 changes. So the only two people in the lineup that actually managed to survive from the weekend were Mickey van der Ven and Richarlison. I think that keeping Richarlison in the team was the right idea to help breed some confidence into him. So we'll just quickly go through the lineup there. So we had Fraser Forster in goal. Our right back of Emerson Royale, left back Ben Davies, who was captain on the night because every single one of our captains and vice captains was either on the bench. In fact, yes, they were all on the bench. Then Sanchez partnered Mickey van der Ven in the middle with the midfield trio of Oliver Skip, Højbjerg and Lo Celso, and then the front three of Richarlison, Perisic and Solomon. So Solomon started out on the right, Perisic on the left. They did swap over throughout the game. Right, let's talk about how we started the game. Poorly. I think, it's very easy to turn around and say these players aren't good enough. And, the second the game finished, I switched straight over to instant match reaction, and the boys that are on We Are Tottenham TV today are just saying, this player, that player, blah, 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 they can all go. But the fact of the matter is, you make 9 changes, bearing in mind these guys haven't been playing, since the beginning of the season. And I've said this time and time again with certain players when they've come in, there is a massive difference between being fit and match sharp. There is a massive difference. And then when you ask 9 players to play together that have not been throughout the season so far, and I know we're only a few games in, but that is way too many players, especially when we're playing a new system. And I know we've been playing it since pre-season, but we had a disrupted pre-season. It was Lo Celso's first start. Højbjerg, not used to being on the bench. He's come in and not played an awful lot. Davinson Sanchez been a very much a bit part player throughout God knows how many seasons now. Fraser Forster, this is his first appearance in goal since his injury. But I will say, I think Fraser Forster actually played pretty well up until the penalty shootout, which we'll talk about in a bit. Richarlison, for him it was another one of those, hit and miss games, but he did get the goal, which hopefully will boost him. I am a little bit shocked that Bazuma didn't come off the bench. So if we look at the substitutes bench, it was very, very strong. So you had Sonny, Bazuma, Maddison, Vicario, Romero, Kulusevski, Papsar, Udogi and Dane Scarlett, who actually came on at half-time. Now, I don't actually know what happened with Giovanni Lo Celso at half-time, but he was hoiked off and we actually saw Dane Scarlett come on, and we had Richarlison still up top as well. But what I will say about Fulham, I do think very, very well drilled, and I have to say Ream at centre-back dealt with Richarlison very, very well in that first half. I thought Ream throughout the game read it very, very well. He made plenty of interceptions. He was strong. And I think Fulham as a whole, I think they know at some point that Richarlison was going to have a really good game to try and, prove that he's the man that can not take over from Harry Kane, but play in the middle of the three and be a presence. And he tried. There were times where Richarlison was double teamed or triple teamed. And I have to say, after Richarlison scored, he did come back and do his defensive work. But yeah, I thought, Ream, I just thought he was outstanding for Fulham all night. Rodak was okay in goal. Obviously, they got their goal. Really frustrating. But, I mean, to be fair, they were on top and they deserved it. So, what more can I say on that? in terms of the way we were playing, it was very obvious that these players have not gelled enough yet. And I will say it time and time again, it's way too many changes. 9 changes against a Fulham team that were quite strong, if I'm honest. It was a very decent lineup from them. Adama Traore caused us quite a lot of problems down the right-hand side. I think it's evident to see why we never actually bothered going for Traore in the end, because despite his pace, despite his strength and the problems he causes people, his final product, whether that be his shooting ability or crossing ability, it just isn't there. And I think the annoying thing about someone like Adama Traore is if he had that crossing and finishing ability, he'd be an absolute world beater, because he is an animal with his pace and tenacity and strength. But look, just running through the lineup of how the players played. Fraser Forster, I think, considering he didn't play any minutes in pre-season, he was, very much injured, he's come back. I think his distribution, apart from one dodgy pass late in the second half, I think he was okay. Handled the ball pretty well. He was quite quick at just spreading it out wide or to one of the centre-backs close to him. He made a couple of big saves in the game, most notably the one on 90 minutes when he closed down the angle really well. So without Fraser Forster's performance, we lose the game in normal time. Emerson Royale, I thought, performed okay. He's actually quite comfortable coming inside into the midfield and giving Kulusevski the space out on the right-hand side. Couple of loose passes, but he made some really good tackles, a really good sliding tackle towards the end of the game on João Palhinha, a player that we once were linked with. And by the way, I mean, it wasn't his best game tonight, Palhinha, but what a player he's been. He's very much roughing the tackle. Picks up a lot of yellow cards, a bit like Romero, but, he's a hell of a player. On the other side, Ben Davies, not his best game. I think he was outdone for pace too many times tonight. And I think that the back line as a whole wasn't overly impressive. Davinson Sanchez wasn't his worst night, wasn't his best night. It was very much a Davinson Sanchez performance, and obviously it had to be him. The second he stepped up for the penalty, just something inside me knew he was going to miss. It was written in the stars that Davinson Sanchez's Spurs career was probably going to end with a moment like this. And do you know what? I felt sorry for him, and I'm sick of fans being on his back. He's never tried to be a bad player for Tottenham. He's just not had the consistent playing time. He sent a lot of what I would call long passes, underhit them tonight, or just didn't have enough pace on them. Bit like his penalty, not enough conviction. It was very obvious where he was going to put it. On the whole, just an okay performance from him. Van der Ven, again, okay performance, nothing special. And I think that's, purely, they've not got a relationship. Van der Ven is a new player, and Sanchez has very much been out of the side for a long time, and it's hard for him to be up to match fitness. So, again, I kind of half blame Postecoglou for the performance there. Moving into the midfield, I thought Skippy and Højbjerg, Skippy was fairly quiet in the first half. Højbjerg had a lot more of the ball, but unfortunately, Højbjerg kind of looks to me like a guy that is already out the door. Tonight really was a poor night for Højbjerg. I thought his passing was pretty much dreadful. He took a ridiculous shot that flew out to the left-hand side for a goal kick later in the game, when he probably should have just crossed it back in, would have been the right decision. Little ball over the top. Or if you're going to shoot from the position he was at, it has to be low and hard. A shot with a packed box that's low and hard, it gives the keeper decisions to make. It could deflect off somebody, you can earn yourself a corner, and he just wildly lashed at it, and it was absolutely ridiculous. Skipper wasn't overly impressed with. And I just think them two next to each other doesn't work anyway. I feel they're way too similar a player to play with each other. Lo Celso, he just couldn't get into the game. And the news did break today that unless a decent sized bid comes in for him, we're not going to sell him, and very much we were looking for him to stay as backup to Maddison. But again, it's really hard to be overcritical of all these players tonight because they shouldn't have been playing together. There should not have been 9 changes. There should have been more fluidity. I feel like had Lo Celso have played with Bazuma and Sarr from the beginning of the game, he probably has a completely different half. If he has Kulusevski to one side of him, Sonny to the other, and Richie in front of him, I think it's very different. But there was just so many changes. It's hard to be completely critical of the players tonight because they shouldn't have been playing together, that many of them. It was ridiculous. I know I'm ranting, but Perisic out on the left, he's clearly not up to start in a game. I don't think. I think at his age now, I know there are players that have been around his age that really give it a go, but I just think he was outrun for a lot of the night. He didn't have the legs himself. When he went off, he actually looked very, very tired, and I think he very much is best at coming on later in the game, like he has done so far this season. I think that is the role that he needs to play. That's what I've been most impressed with this season of him. And tonight, I just thought he was fairly quiet. At one point, I kind of forgot he was playing. Then Solomon, frustrating night for him. I think a lot of the time, the problem was for him, he kept hanging out so wide and so far up. Davinson Sanchez kept trying to play him the ball, but the distance between them was so big. A lot of the passes, when he did come deeper, were under hit to him, and he had a lot of work to do. So, yeah, not really impressed with him either. And then Richarlison in the middle of the three. Again, it was another night where Richarlison, he tried to work hard, was making runs again, doing what he was doing, and I just felt like once again they weren't finding him properly, and anytime they did find him, he had to come a bit deeper like Harry Kane does for the ball. But the difference is Richarlison is not at his best with his back to goal. In that situation, his natural instinct isn't to try and pick out a pass. Richarlison's natural instinct is to try and turn and take players on. And because they were double teaming him, triple teaming him, he quite often turned himself into trouble. But he grew into the game, and it was really annoying the way the goal came. Poor Tete. In case you haven't seen the game, his boot tore, and he was gesturing to the bench saying, "I need another boot. I need another boot." They didn't have any boots at the sideline. The referee sent him off to go get another boot, and he had to run round the pitch and then head down the tunnel. And in the time that he was off, we get the ball out wide. The ball is floated in, and Richarlison nods it into the back of the net. Actually, it was a decent header. It was a decent ball in. The assist was from Perisic, which I will say, although he wasn't great tonight, the delivery for that goal, fine. The goal, good. It's just a shame it had to come when they only had 10 men on the pitch. But from that moment, it kind of shifted. We started our ascendancy. We started playing much better. By this point, obviously, we'd had the substitute made at half-time. Scarlett was on at this point. And then on the 71st, 72nd minute, we saw Sonny, Kulusevski and Sarr. They came on for Richarlison, Perisic and Oliver Skipp. And, I thought that's kind of, we started taking a bit more control. You can tell that these players have played more this season. Sarr on the ball, driving a bit more. Sonny, actually, it was one of his better performances we've seen of him this season. Obviously, you're coming up against a Fulham side that have run themselves ragged throughout the game. So, Sonny, fresh legs versus them. I don't read too much into that. 82nd minute, we obviously saw James Maddison come on. And I don't really think that was to win the game. That was for Manor Solomon. I think that was more in the back of the mind for penalties. But I just realised I haven't really spoken about their goal, Fulham's goal. Obviously, we were carved inside out in the box. The ball came across, and it was just really unlucky. Van de Ven scored an own goal. And actually, when I was watching the game, I got really annoyed because the commentator kept calling him Von de Ven. And every time he did it, something inside me just raged. It was like there was this little vein running down my head, pulsating every time he said Von de Ven instead of Van de Ven. And you'd think at half-time somebody would have corrected him on that and he'd have got it right. I mean, considering it says Van de Ven on the team sheet and Van de Ven on the back of his shirt. It's a weird thing for me to get so annoyed about, considering how many times I get players' names wrong. But if you're paid to commentate, make sure you get their name right. So yeah, really unlucky for him in that situation. But Fulham very much did deserve a goal. At the time, they were pretty much all over us. But as I said, after all these substitutions were made in the second half, we kind of upped the game a little bit, and it did look like if anyone was going to go on to win the game, it was going to be us. That wasn't to be. Solomon had a shot that was parried out by Rodak, and it kind of came at Scarlett too quick to react, so he didn't manage to get a shot off. It just kind of hit him. Yeah, then obviously we went to penalties, because that's the way it is now at the end of 90 minutes if there's no winner. Yeah, penalties. So it was pretty frustrating to watch the penalties. Fraser Forster. It was a very strange thing to watch, Fraser Forster. He kind of just fell to his right several times. It didn't really dive. He just kind of flopped a little bit to his right. He didn't look convincing at all for any of the penalties, apart from, was it Harris's penalty? I think Harris absolutely rocketed his penalty, and it hit the top of the crossbar and went in off of, not the top of the crossbar, sorry, the bottom of the crossbar, and went in. And that was the only one that he actually made a proper dive for. I didn't get to, but the rest of them, they weren't even great penalties from the Fulham players. The first one, Pereira, took one of those really annoying, stupid run-ups that I hate. I know run-ups, they say they have to be more of a fluid motion, but it was one of those, like, almost, it wasn't stop-start, but it was very, like, Sorry that was some sort of stupid noise as I did that, but as the only way I can describe him, it was almost like a staggered, slow, ridiculous run-up, and he calmly slotted it in. There was another one that pretty much went down the middle. I think that was Raul Jimenez's penalty. He took quite a long run-up and then just kind of slotted it down the middle. But yeah, really, really frustrating to watch Forster barely make an effort to any of these penalties. And I think it was a case of he started diving, realising they were going the other way, and pulled out the dive. Our penalties, mostly good. Kulusevski, very confident. Sonny took the first penalty and very confidently struck. Keeper went the right way, but the pace took it underneath him. Kulusevski, very good. Very good penalty. Who else took one? Maddison took his penalty. That was the last one that we actually managed to take. That was very well taken. Yeah, so yeah, and Davinson Sanchez. So he actually took our third penalty. I was very shocked at that. I think, for me, in penalties, you have to go strong and get weaker as you go. I've never understood why like better players tend to take like the fourth or fifth penalties. There's no need for that. You just need to get the penalties in the back of the net. So I was shocked that Davinson took the third penalty. In my opinion, it should have been Son, followed by Kulusevski, followed by Maddison. Then if Sanchez were going to take one, maybe let him take the fifth one. You know, there was plenty of other players that could have taken a penalty. I mean, they're not particularly great, the list of players that are left there. So you had left Emerson Royale, Van der Ven, Ben Davies, Højbjerg, Papsar, Dane Scarlett. So I suppose, you know, Papsar and Dane Scarlett, very young, inexperienced. Højbjerg, I would have thought, would have been an okay bet for a penalty, and maybe Ben Davies, considering how long he's been at the club and was wearing the captain's armband for the majority of the game until obviously Sonny came on. But look, Davinson Sanchez, I respect him for stepping up, but it was written in the stars, wasn't it? The second he walked up, he was going to miss. And my issue with it, the Spurs fans are going to get on his back so much after this. They're just going to be like, Davinson Sanchez is rubbish. He's blah, blah, blah. He shouldn't be in our club. Get him out the door. Honestly, I feel so sorry for him. Like, that was, for him in his head, he was probably thinking, this is the moment where I can win the Spurs fans. Not win us around, but kind of be a little bit of a hero in a game. And it just didn't happen. It was very frustrating. So, yeah, we are out of the Carabao Cup at the first hurdle. against a decent Fulham side that I think are going to go on to have a very good season once again. They're under a good manager in Silva. He was obviously in the stands for tonight, and Boa Morte was taking control, but there was communication going on all throughout the game. Silva, he was making a lot of notes throughout the game, so everything was, he was pretty much controlling the game. But, obviously I'm not watching the press conference right now. It'll be interesting to see what Postecoglou has to say about this. And I don't think really a lot of questions have been answered about some of these players because, again, I will stress it, Postecoglou has to take a lot of responsibility for this. He made way too many changes in players that maybe he wasn't sure about, and he said that he was gonna rotate. But, to this extent, ridiculous. I think maybe you can tweak one or two players in a Premier League squad or in this sort of game, but to change 9 against a team like Fulham, way too much. I think he basically left them as lambs to the slaughter. And I was shocked that we didn't lose the game within 90 minutes, if I'm honest. We did very well to stay in it. Obviously, we were helped when they went down to 10 men temporarily, but I just feel sorry for the Spurs fans. Based on the style of play that we have and how we've started the season, I think they deserved to see more of the starting players that have gelled already. And this is what I want to reiterate. I don't think this is a reflection on the players on the pitch. I just think there was not enough of them that have played together this season that have had a chance to gel. We haven't really seen Solomon at all. Skippy's been a bit part. Perisic obviously normally comes off the bench late, so he's not used to starting games. Lo Celso we've barely seen. Ben Davies has pretty much been on the bench and just come on towards the end of the game like Perisic to help see the game through. Emerson Royale, obviously had the first game. The next two have been Pedro Porro. Fraser Forster again obviously hasn't played a game. Dane Scarlett coming on in the second half. He's obviously played some in pre-season, but hasn't actually, played for us in the season. Yeah, just very strange. I don't know what he was thinking. But hey, I suppose we're out the cup, one less thing to worry about. So we can go on and win the league now. Only joking, I don't want to curse our season. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what he says in the press conference. And because I've done this video straight after the game, obviously it's not going to come to you straight after the game. It's taken me, 20 minutes to record it. I've got to quickly edit it and post it. So you're probably going to see this about an hour after the game. But what I'll do is listen to the press conference and then come back to you with bits that Postecoglou said, see whether he recognises that he made a mistake making so many changes. I mean, he's a pretty straight shooter in press conferences, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does take some sort of responsibility for tonight. We'll see. But yeah, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed that one. Leave your comments below about what you thought of the performance tonight. Where your blame lies, what you thought of certain players. Let me know your thoughts on Davinson Sanchez, because it'll be interesting to see where the fan base is at. But I just think, based on the career he's had, I think a lot of it is Spurs' fault rather than his fault. I think any time he's come into the squad as a bit part player, it hasn't worked. His best moments in a Spurs shirt have been when he's regularly played, when he's covered for an injured player for a prolonged period of time. And I think we've kind of done him a disservice because we haven't trusted him enough. He had all the attributes to be a great player, and actually in this system, he's probably the best of the backup centre-backs that we can use. And I just think maybe next to Romero, he's a better player. But yeah, we'll see. Thanks for sticking around. As I said, leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. Until next time, come on you Spurs.